I'm from Stellington originally. I've lived in Vernon for close to 18 years.
Excellent. Well, my name is Chris Hill. I'm the chairman and CEO of CDXR. And Charlie's been a great partner of ours. And what we do, I'm from Boston, by the way.
Okay.
Don't hold that against me.
No, my whole family's from Boston.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What part?
My mom's from Cambridge.
Oh, nice.
And most of my family's in Wakefield or Arlington.
That's so funny. My father is in Wakefield.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why is that a small town?
It's a relatively small town. It's a beautiful town.
Yeah.
But I'm up in North Shore. I'm near Manchester by the sea and that area, Rockport area.
Rockport is my favorite place in the
Oh,
world.
that's so
Of
nice.
all the places I've been.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Good
love
for
it
you.
up there.
It's really nice. It's beautiful like it's right into the water.
I've gone for my kids to go to school up there.
Oh, okay.
At, what is it, the Seagulls, or what's the school that's up there in Rockport, one of the colleges? You played lacrosse a bunch.
Oh,
up there
okay.
taking the spot
Yeah,
there. and stuff.
this is a great area.
It's so nice.
Well, it was nice here. I came down last night. My wife and I were in. I was in New Haven, right on the water there. And anyways, so what we do is we work with medical professionals like Dr. Cable, and we focus on enabling support groups in between doctors' visits. It's really that simple. And so we may have a great session here with Dr. Cable and his team, and then what we're going to do is we're relatively new business, but in about a year or two. And what we're going to do is we allow physicians then to set up support groups of people that have similar interests, nutrition or whatever it may be. And the idea is that you're able to sort of, connect with other people. It may be here in person, as we're doing here. It may be.
Hey, Sam!
I'll save my speech for
Do once, yeah.
How are you? Is this your first time coming here?
Yeah, I've never been to this office.
Different
Nice.
office, right?
Very nice.
This is Danae.
Hi.
Samantha.
Sam, nice to meet you.
Hi, Sam. It's Chris Hill. Good to
Nice
see
to
you.
meet you.
How are you?
Good.
You are the 2 pounds patients that I picked.
How fun.
But well, please have a seat. We'll sort of just before we get started, I'll give you a background as to what we're doing and why we're here.
Doesn't matter where we sit.
Yeah, we're here. Pretty good.
At the medical practice, to not just the professionals, that my colleagues, but also the patients, because there's so many practices that are set up for like unsustainable sort of experiences when it comes to treating and managing abnormal weight gain, so that you can lose the weight, but once the program is over, the weight just comes right back on. You get to do it again, and you spend the cash.
Right.
So we did things differently with insurance, and we accepted insurance. About 99% of the patients came in with insurance because they had medical conditions that insurance is covering.
Yeah.
And so we would treat those medical conditions.
Yeah.
And they would get, or we would get reimbursed from the insurance.
Sure.
And patients would get what they wanted, which was control of something that was bothering them, which was their weight.
Yeah.
And resolution of their chronic conditions. And so the trajectory that we see here is not like give them a medicine and they're on it forever, or take their chronic disease that they're going to take with them to their grave, but just make people healthy. And that happens. The body doesn't want to be unhealthy. So that's what the paradigm kind of looks like.
Well, it's funny. I want to share with you a sort of a personal story that really gets to the sort of the cognitive dissonance about how things are treated. What we try to do at CDXR, we're trying to do is focus on what happens in between doctor visits. And when you go to a doctor's visit, I know I had my A1C checked, and it was recommended, said, maybe you can get one of those sensors that to keep an eye on the A1C, right? I said, perfectly fine. So I went through and we got the prescription on it. And then they said, insurance is not going to cover this. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I thought this would be a kind of a smart thing to cover. They said, the only way they'll cover the sensor is if you're already on insulin. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy because I'm not on insulin, and the whole idea of getting an intense sensor is to manage the A1C sugar levels so that you don't get on insulin. And just the idea that we'll cover it if you're already chronic, to me, it just seems backwards, does it?
Yeah. Preventive medicine is totally taking a backseat and continues to take a backseat You know, you have to wait until you are sick to get a medication, or wait until you're sick to get the continuous glucose monitor. It's insanity. So that's not what we do. We don't wait.
Well, I can see we're here in the kitchen for a reason, right?
Yeah.
How can we work on wellness? Sam, it's great to meet you again.
Yeah,
we did a CNXR session together using our telehealth platform, and I appreciate that. And maybe we'll do a virtual reality at some point, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Great to see Dr. Cavo's avatar outfit. It's really something to be seen. Tell us about your journey and how you met Dr. Cavo, just in general, you know, how things have gone and how you're evolving to your wellness.
Yeah. So I actually was given the information for Pounds a few years ago when I was at a pool with my nephew, and like I was like, oh, I want that pizza, and like the mom was like, just eat it, and I was like, yeah, but I was like, I'll gain weight from it, like and she's like, you know, I go to this place and they've been so great, and I bought, and she kind of was saying how, you know, it's like a whole journey. So I put the information in my phone, and then one day I was just like so sick of feeling like lethargic. I did not like how I hated myself. And so I said, you know, let me just see what this is. I didn't really, no offense, I didn't really have any faith in it.
Sure. Because
I tried so many things, and I've tried so hard, and I took pride in educating myself in what types of food are nutritious, and I love to cook. So for me, cooking, it wasn't a problem to be like, oh, I have to meal prep. Like, I love to do that.
It was the joy of your
experience. But like the scale would just go up 5, down 5, up 5, down 5. And so when I met with Dr. Cavo, you know, he said the same thing, like, let's do some blood work, let's see what's going on. You know, met with the nutritionist and all of that stuff, and you know, we found some insulin resistance. We talked about different things that I could utilize, and you know, and sure enough, the losing the weight was like almost like an afterthought of everything else. Like, I started to feel better. Sleeping was a huge issue of mine. Sleep is not an issue whatsoever anymore. Energy levels are up. You know, it's not always perfect or anything, but and then along the way, like I participated in your group that one time, and then I was invited to this like challenge group on Facebook with the Pounds people. So again, it's a safe space during the holidays, and you know, when we weren't really communicating, like the girls would be like, hey, anybody out there, it's crickets.
It's not our natural instinct to get up and go talk to someone, even if we're in the same office.
Interesting.
And the level of multitasking is like, I feel like I'm failing if I'm not doing 2 things at once. So I'm in a Teams meeting on this screen, but my email's up on that screen, and I'm reading and responding to emails while I'm in a meeting. And neither one of those tasks is getting my full attention. So am I really doing everything to the best of my ability? Because it's now expected that we're always going to be able to do, you know, respond immediately, right? When's the last time, you know, you waited 24 hours for somebody to reply to an email?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Usually there's something wrong if that's the case, right?
Right. You know, and so I think there's good and bad, right? I mean, I can very easily call a coworker that's sitting across the country that maybe I had never connected with before, but now either through the benefit of a virtual, you know, community outreach program, through work, now I know that, hey, so-and-so sitting in California has worked on this type of job before, and let me see what, you know, he or she can contribute to this particular issue that I'm having. So
it's good news, bad news type of thing. Question, just like we've been saying, this whole circle, which is, it's where you put the energy, right? How you frame it, right? It could be great or it could be dangerous depending on how you look at it.
I think it's another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to pick the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
So if I have a colleague who's sitting on the other side of the office from me, I need to get up and go talk.
I just liked about the wellness circle that we did before in our discussions that we've had, is it's not about Pounds and what we do. It's more about like what happens to the patients that take the time to like put in the work to figure themselves out and crack the code. Yeah. And once they've like done that, this is the outcome. Yeah. And it's, I mean, will there be some obstacles like Rhode Island, you know, vacations or trips to Michigan. Yeah, there are obstacles, but you know what? It's not like you start spiraling out of control. It's like you catch yourself before it just all goes to like a disaster all over again.
It's interesting, the journey, what you're talking about, the framing, that's what I find fascinating. Of what happens, I find it motivating talking to Dr. Cabo just innately, but then you kind of like, then you're home, and it's great to be home. But how you frame things and how you sort of check yourself, if you will, or make sure you're developing those habits on a long-term basis. It sounds like the framing, the sort of the thought process is maybe the hardest part. Is that true?
It's all mental, I would say. At the end of the day, you're in your head, like we were saying. If you think you're going to fail that math test, you're absolutely going to fail that math test. And sometimes it's like getting out of your own way, getting out of your own head. I've actually found journaling to be really helpful, especially so I struggled with binge eating, and I did really well for a while when we first met, and then I had a few times where it happened, and I wrote down like how I felt. I wrote down what I ate, and then I went back to it a few days later, and being able to kind of read that and process how I felt then and how I was feeling while I was reading it was really helpful. So I started kind of, I don't journal every day. Sometimes I journal a lot. Sometimes I'll go for weeks without it. But either way, it's so interesting to go back and see what I wrote and how I felt. How was my energy? What did I eat? What did I say about myself that day? What was I thankful for? What was I not so thankful for? It was something that I've never really done before, but I think that there's like a major importance in that. And there's so many different, you could do it on your phone, but for me, physically handwriting it
the process of writing it down, that's very powerful.
Yeah, and even in college, I was, even at work now, I'm still like, I'm sorry, I need to print this and have a hard copy of it. Like, for me, it's just how I process it, and it really just works through my head, and it helps me through those things. So
that's a technique that you use.
Yeah, even like with any aspect of life. And I'm trying to get my niece, she's 15, and like, I love her 15-year-old problems. I'm like, just write about it. No one's going to read it. It's only for you. And if you want to share it, you can. And if not, then don't. And sometimes it's humorous, but I go back and read, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, talk about being dramatic. Like, and with your hormones too. Like, was I hungry during the week before my period or after my period and stuff like that? It's a very helpful tool.
Well, it's funny. I share that. I know. Yeah, I laugh because I remember when I was graduating from college, wondering what's the next step. And I remember just sitting down with a little book, and it was a day planner. And I said, okay, I'm going to write down, it happened to be 25 lines. So I could write 25 goals. And you laugh, you go back, because I still have that list from many years ago. And every year I would update it. Some things would stay, some things wouldn't. But, what am I going to do next? And then save $50 and all that stuff. You go back and you say, that was what my mindset was. And look how far you've come. Are there certain other techniques that you use, Danae, just to kind of check yourself and keep on track?
When is my next appointment?
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
That's interesting. I've
Yeah.
never think about that.
So I'm actually going to see Dr. Cabo on Monday.
Interesting.
I'm starting to for the first
No way,
time.
really?
Yeah.
And that's a motivational factor for you, obviously.
It is, because I was just away last week, and
Yeah.
I traveled this week for work. So I travel for work, right? And so those are the days that I find it hardest to stay on track. Even if I'm planning and I have my snacks in my bag, or whatever it is, it's somebody wants to go out to dinner or this or that. So if I say to myself, I'm going to see Dr. Cabo on Monday, it's like, okay, I have to be accountable to somebody.
I don't.
No pressure. No pressure, Charlie.
No, it's just like my own, like, I have to be accountable to somebody other than me.
Yeah.
And I really want that visit to go well.
Yeah.
And like, even if, and that's part of the reason, like, this is my folder. I bring it to every single appointment. I have every printout from my very first weigh-in in here.
Yeah.
And one of the things, if I'm having an appointment where I'm like not necessarily thrilled, there are so many metrics that are measured when you step on the scale, and you're like, well, your weight is up, but your body fat
Yeah,
is
it's a
down.
different.
Yeah.
So you're actually healthier today.
Yeah.
And so now I maybe don't feel so horrible that my weight is up because, talking about things that stick, you say your weight is the cover of the book, but you have to get into the chapters.
Gotta read the book.
Good analogy.
And-
I really like that analogy.
So the different metrics help in knowing that I'm about to come to an appointment affects maybe what I do the week ahead of time.
You put your finger on, I think, why we're here, and I'm so glad that we are here today, because the core reason why we started Cindy XR, why we're now doing Cindy XR TD to hopefully share with others that are going through similar situations, is what happens in between doctor's visits. That's really the interesting thing, right? Because you're a busy person, as is most physicians, and part of it is sort of get in, check in, then move on. And I was surprised, in coming into Cindy XR as chairman and CEO. I'm not from the medical community, right? But I was like fascinated as to the in some ways the lack of infrastructure, and you do more than most with the Facebook group and the challenge around the holidays. But it seems like physicians are very time challenged, right? We know that for sure. And it's hard to do things in between visits, which is why, frankly, we started Cindy XR, which is to work with physicians and their teams to figure out how we can do support groups. Like we're doing a support group here in person, right? We've done one using telehealth. We're looking to do one soon with our virtual reality platform, which adds a whole other interesting aspect to engagement. But what happens between visits, I think, is really the missing piece, right? Because when you get on the scale or check a blood sugar, it's looking at what happened 90 days ago or even longer, right? And so the techniques of journaling, which I find fascinating, the techniques of just think about things that you do normally, even things like just doing laundry and how that can help, is all very positive. But then there's also challenges. You talked about maybe going out, having a drink or two, and all of a sudden that leads to a great dinner, everybody's laughing, having fun. You still need to live, even if you cut certain things out. So what are some of the biggest external challenges in between doctor's visits? Sometimes you have to choose carefully about who you're hanging out with, would you say?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And another thing that Dr. Cavo once said, it's like you're a sliding scale, like where your journey is, it's always going to be sliding. And so that's, deciding. Like I went out for dinner with one of my friends last week, and that could have gone many different ways. I could have had drinks, I could have gotten something carb heavy, but I decided, like, you know what, no, I kind of haven't been the greatest with everything. I think something high in protein, load up on the veggies would be best for me. And the thing that could be challenging is, like, sometimes people be like, oh, you're going to just eat that, or why don't you just eat this? And it's like, because it's what I want to eat. I'm choosing this to eat this.
Right.
And, birthday party, any sort of, like, our social life is revolved around food and drinks, I feel like, or at least mine is. And that's hard.
Well, those are family traditions, right? How do you go?
Right. But for example, like tonight I'm going to my parents' house, but I'm bringing the food and I'm cooking the food. And so I have control over it. But I'm somebody who loves to cook. So for me, I think I could make anything healthy. Like I have this like pizza that I go to that I make homemade that's 35 grams of protein, like under 400 calories. Like, so, I've really taken the time to figure that out. And when I can, like, host people, like if I want to have a get together and I could cook and provide the food, that's helpful. And then planning ahead. So like I looked at that menu last week when I went out and I was like, what would be the best option? And some of the tools I learned when I was in that challenge group was I remember I was getting ready and I was going to an Italian restaurant and I'm like, what am I going to get? And one of the girls was like, what about just get a side of meatballs and a big salad? Like you could get a couple meatballs that's high protein, stay away from the pasta and have a salad. Like, great idea. Like you wouldn't think of it, but a lot of times it's just kind of getting back to the basics, even just with the appointments, with with the dietitians. It's, don't put one piece of popcorn in your mouth. It's so basic, common sense, but you need that though.
You're also, I think, keying on something that I find like it's like a life hack, and I really like it, which is take the energy or the activity that you already know you're going to do, right? There's a birthday party. It's your family. You're going to be there. To take that energy, and I really find it fascinating when you're doing things, which is, okay, I love my family. I love to cook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control the situation by cooking for my family and making sure it's healthy. I mean, it's the same energy, but it's directed towards the outcome that you're looking for. And it sounds like a win-win, which is kind of interesting about the way to do it. It takes some real planning, but I like it. I like what you're doing. Do you find yourself also trying to figure out, okay, how do I sort of craft things so we have a win-win across the board without just sort of, okay, I'm not going to do that or I'm not going to do that?
Yeah, well, I never feel like I'm missing out.
Good. Tell me more about that. Yeah.
Because I can say to my family, so even so simple, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have brunch and we'll do yogurt parfaits. Okay, well, I'm not gonna eat your yogurt that has 40 grams of sugar.
Yes.
Right.
I'm gonna bring my own yogurt that is protein heavy, and so it's a simple swap.
Sure.
Making swaps, right? You talk about pizza. I have now like 3 different options for when it's pizza night at my house, because I am also a cook, and I make my pizza dough from scratch and all of that. So it's like, well, if I'm already making that one from scratch, I can just make this one too. And so just finding the workarounds to be in control of what I'm doing, and knowing that if I do have a dinner to go out to, what can I eat during the day to stay low calorie? Because for me, I have to be low calorie. So that I can not be hungry all day, but still, look at the menu ahead of time and say, my dinner is going to be 1,000 calories, and I am going to have that piece of bread. And, where do I need to start to get to that point by the end of the day?
How important is it about that, having the folks around you? Again, having the advice from Dr. Cavo and the nutritionist is one thing, but like I know, for example, I really love bike riding. And I was bike riding, and all of a sudden I joined a club, and they have a spinning class. I'm like, just riding a bike in a dark room does not sound like a lot of fun. Versus taking a bike around the Charles River in Boston or something like that, where I live up in the North Shore. And then all of a sudden, I'm in a group environment. They turn the lights down, they put the music up, and we just go. And it goes like that. And I realized that being in a group environment with like-minded folks, for whatever reason, it's more than just a workout. It's like, wow, it's motivational, it's there, it's inspirational, and the time goes by very quickly. Are you finding, even just the conversation we're having here, that being around people that have very similar approaches, it's kind of important, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think so.
It's so important because often in many aspects of life, for me at least, I'm like, am I the only one that feels this way? Am I the only one struggling, just to get out of bed sometimes or to do this or that? But then when you talk about it in safe places like this, you realize, oh, I'm not the only one making these swaps and the only one planning this. And it's hard because my close group of friends aren't on the same path as me with wellness, not all of them, and I want to be super mindful of not making them feel any sort of negative way for the choices that they choose. Even my sisters are really close with me, and they have different priorities, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I always just get nervous, okay, well, I don't want you to think I'm judging you if you want to do that, or if you want to eat that, or if you want to drink that. But that's definitely a big challenge that I find too.
It's a big difference between feeling like they're judging you, you're judging others, versus we're in this together.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing sounds better than homemade pasta, homemade dough for pizza that's healthy. I think that's sort of a positive spin. The mind framing is really fascinating on this sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, just in general in society, we crave a sense of community, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
It's community centers exist for a reason. Whatever your whatever your, thing is.
Yeah.
So for example, right, I work in design and construction. Well, last week was Women in Construction Week.
Yep.
And all across my company, nationwide, there were different events that just were, put on to connect all the different women across the company so that you know that you're not alone. Even if you're one of 10 on your job site, there are 10 other women on other job sites.
It's very powerful, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the evolution of the construction industry with that regards to that.
Yeah, but just looking for that sense of community in everything that we do.
Yeah.
Play groups, right? Your mom. Yeah, when your
Yeah.
kids are little and you're going crazy
Great
because
example.
all of a sudden here you have this thing that you're now responsible for its health, safety, and welfare for the rest of its life. How do you do this on your own? And as a mom, I couldn't do it on my own. So why is this any different, right? This is something that many other people are on this journey together, and if we can support one another, that's great. And I think doing it virtually is huge, because when you have a busy schedule, you work full time, you have kids, you do this, you do that, it's a lot harder to get up and go somewhere versus like take my laptop and go in my bedroom and shut the door.
Yeah.
And just take 30 minutes where I feel like I'm doing something for myself, I'm getting that support that I need, so that as I look ahead on my calendar and say I only have a week before my next visit, that I can get through that week. So that seems to make a lot of sense.
I find it fascinating, and this gets to interesting thing about where we are in healthcare today. Syndics are, obviously we're in the business of supporting these community. I love the way you framed it, by the way, better than I could ever frame it, which is, getting the moms together or getting the women in construction together and know that we're here in support. It brings up an interesting question, I think, for you, Dr. Cable, because you're an enlightened person. We're sitting here for a reason. You were an early adopter of our telehealth support groups, or virtual reality support groups, and now in-person support groups. But there's an interesting conundrum about in your industry in that physicians, particularly in a post-pandemic world, right, where all of a sudden you're getting emails, you're getting text messages, and of course we all expect them to respond, right? I was just reading an article, and Dr. Cable and I were speaking earlier about, physicians will start charging for responding to that email or that text message, And the question is, they're so busy and they're trying to figure all this out in a post-pandemic world that sometimes just taking the time that you're doing here today to stop what you're doing, to have a conversation. The good news is that we're learning together, and then we're also be able to do Syndics RTV, communicate to others. So that's an investment that hopefully makes things more efficient. But let's be honest, most physicians are so busy they don't have time to do this type of activity. So what's your advice to folks like that, or how do you rationalize spending your finite time to get involved with this type of support group?
I'm just curious. And I think physicians by nature are curious. I think people, like, if you have curiosity, then you're gonna wanna look at ways to do things that are different than traditional.
Sure.
So I don't think anybody's gonna resolve or solve the problem of abnormal waking through apps and telemedicine appointments. I think you have to come in and have a body composition and sit down and have connection with another, human, another soul.
Sure.
But I think that as people become more comfortable with the treatment plan, that something like this, where you can be remote, where you can put your computer on, you definitely can leverage that kind of treatment modality. And I think because, and again, curiosity, I'm here and I learn from my patients, but what I'm hearing is really useful for them now is accountability. And when you're a member of a tribe, or when you've got a group community that you're expected to show up, you're holding yourself accountable because you're in a group. And I think that, like with telemedicine and where we are post-pandemic, there's a sense of accountability that goes into these appointments. I think that these kind of wellness circles, I hope they take off, because I think there is a lot of utility there. Because people will be holding themselves accountable, show up for that wellness circle, And it would be an important behavior, because if you get something out of it, which I hope people would do, it's a positive sort of reward, and so the experience will want to be repeated.
You use the term accountability. The other term
They used it, not me.
I
just hijacked
it.
it.
Key. You're helping them be accountable, and you're being accountable. The other term now that I'm in the medical is efficacy. People can you improve through the PDQ9 and pressure that we did this today, and then tomorrow Sam has a better night's sleep, which I hope happens. Because you seem to be on the right path. How do you look at that investment of your time regarding efficacy, and what are some of the metrics that you would expect in a program like this that would go on that you would think would be material to other physicians?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but
let me ask you.
I would say that it's so individualized that I think sometimes medicine misses the mark because they're waiting for the study to prove it.
Yes.
And I think while we stand there waiting for that proof, people are suffering. Right. And so I don't have the metrics to say, if you're here for 6 months, this is what you can expect. Or if you're here for 3 years, this is what you can expect. But I think that if you come in, you can expect to become consciously aware of something that you're unconsciously unaware about before you walk through the door, because we're going to teach you something.
Right. And you can learn something. But I find it interesting. Like, I just the term efficacy. It's like so metric based. Okay, well, if you give somebody insulin, then studies show this, that, and the other. As opposed to having a conversation about loneliness or about better sleep habits. And obviously the answer is a combination, right? You have to be qualitative, quantitative, all those kind of words make matter here. But when you learn from discussions like this, and maybe doing a Google search or doing a Reddit search or looking at social media, have you been able to use some of these like a Google or Reddit or whatever? Has that been a positive or a negative experience, or what are the pitfalls of what's out there now in terms of how you learn when you're not in a wellness circle like we are today?
I think it's both a blessing and a curse, because there is some truth out there and there's some far-fetched truth out there too. So I think it's important to be educated first, coming to a professional, educate yourself, work
it's
with
important that
this is primary. This needs to be your primary source.
Right.
And I do also agree with like the physical meeting with the doctor or meeting in person, and having a secondary be a virtual community. And the nice thing about a virtual community is you can maybe connect with people that you would never meet. I would have never, we're meeting here in person today, but I would have never met you. I would have never met those other people that were on that wellness call. And then it might be something sustainable. Like, I don't know where you live, you don't know where I live, but maybe there's a way we could still connect after the fact, and so but it's all secondary. And I think it's important that, because there's so many things, like I remember coming to an appointment and I said, have you heard of this pill? And he's like, I don't know, probably not, because there's so many out there. And, sure enough, we talked about what it was, and, like that I didn't end up needing it, or I didn't buy it or whatever. But I also wanted to touch on how you were talking about not waiting for something to say, okay, there was 9 years of research on this. Like, I came to a point in my journey where what I was doing, I could not do anymore. And so we talked, and he's like, this is what I would like you to try. It's kind of like a little, I don't know if you use the word research per se, but it's, this should have similar effects to what you were previously doing. Like this supplement or this might help you. And so that's what I've been doing. Like, we met at 4 weeks. My appointment is also next week to meet at our 8-week appointment. But the other great thing about Pounds, I'm kind of all over the place because I've been thinking about all this, but the other great thing about Pounds too is that not once did I ever feel pressured. There's lots of stuff in the waiting room that you can buy. Yeah. There's lots of stuff behind the counter that you can buy. Yeah. They have snacks, food, supplements, all this RX stuff. And not once did I ever feel the least bit pressured. Like, I actually asked at one of my appointments, like, can I just go and buy any of that stuff? Like, what's the deal with that? Like, and I love that about there, because it's not like
the natural approach into it.
Yeah, and it's like when we did start talking about it, he explained what the purpose is, what I can expect by using the product or whatever it may be. But it's really a holistic approach to not just here's the amount of calories you get to eat, here's this and that. I mean, there is math involved in it at the end of the day that you eat 5,000 calories every day, hello, but at the end of the day, they look at it, every aspect that I didn't even know was possible.